Hello there. Yesterday, a report was released from the Independent Police Conduct Authority. It's been over a year in the making, and that was looking at the police actions during the February protest/occupation of Wellington and the Parliament grounds. And there's some fascinating findings in there because this whole protest has for a very long time been one of those really divisive things that some people tell you was all about peace and love and unity, and other people will tell you was incredibly violent and had a whole bunch of bullshit happen to it. So what did the report itself actually find? So one of the interesting things that came out of it was that a whole bunch of cases against people arrested, particularly around the 10th of February, had to be dropped due to the way that evidence was collected or not collected in the heat of the moment, which simply meant the process hadn't been followed. Not that these people were innocent or not guilty or whatever, just that the process there meant that those people got off scot-free, which is why their charges were dropped. It also noted that of the 1,905 complaints that it received about what happened at that particular incident, the vast majority of them were about 28 specific incidents, the ones that were pushed on social media platforms. And the vast majority of complaints actually came from people who were not directly involved with the protest at all. Some of the complaints even included information videos and footage of other events, including a child from a protest in Seattle and other people being shot with the foam bullet things and the damage that they'd done. Both of those were put in as evidence by people, but had nothing at all to do with this particular action. And there were some incidents involved that the IPCA, that's a mouthful, decided probably weren't actually worth going through and investigating further, like whether or not somebody was tripped, whether or not the police process for arresting the person who wanted to do a citizen's arrest on the ministers in the parliament was warranted, and whether or not somebody should have been dragged out naked and pulled their hair. Those kind of things, they decided didn't need investigation after looking into them further. It also debunked a whole bunch of claims that had come through, like the use of tear gas, whether or not they had used non-serving police officers, the car attack thingy that the guy pled guilty to last week, plainclothes officers and whether or not they'd been used. They hadn't been used. And the use of things like knuckle duster gloves. Oh, and they didn't start the fires. So the vast majority of the failings from the police on this was about being prepared. They underestimated the size of the original convoy. They didn't do enough early enough to manage traffic around Parliament, and they weren't prepared enough at all for the two actions to try and move the protesters on. But generally speaking, the advice that's come back is that police did what they could with the situation and generally conducted themselves fairly well. Which is not a bad thing. That's what we want to hear from our police. At the same time, there are still some police officers who are suffering from long-term injuries from those attacks. Wonderful people.